Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. Someone asked me to do a video about why discharging from residential treatment on a Friday or Saturday might be risky if a person is going to return to the same people, places, things that they might have been involved with early in their addiction. And for me, I discharged from residential treatment on a Tuesday and then immediately started an outpatient program that was called a partial hospitalization program, where I went and continued my treatment from 9 to 2 o'clock every day. And this was a perfect transition for me because when I came out of treatment, I did not feel cured by any means, nor was I. As we learn, or as you should learn in treatment, the substance use disorder or addiction that we have is something that we have to work on for our lifetimes. And so when I, especially right when I was coming out of treatment, I still felt very restless, discontent. I felt irritable. I was still feeling all of the things that the big book of AA talks about as symptoms of the disease of addiction. And I knew that if I was left to my own devices, if I did not have structure in my life, if I did not have some kind of recovery-based thing to do during the day, that I would be in a position where that restlessness would get the better of me. I didn't feel like I would necessarily go back to using, because by that point I had accepted that I could not have alcohol or drugs as part of my life. But I also knew enough to know that those feelings of confidence can be a little bit tricky sometimes. And if you continue to feel restless, if you continue to feel that anxiety and it continues to mount, then before you know it, you might be in a position where the confidence you once had that you shouldn't be using alcohol or drugs starts to fade as the desire to get rid of those feelings increases. So all of that being said, I knew I was on fairly unsolid ground, shaky ground, and I needed some more foundation in order to get back to quote unquote normal life. So I discharged on a Tuesday. I wanted to keep the momentum going. That was the other thing. I had been receiving treatment all day, every day for 28 days at that point. And I felt no desire to then have an abrupt stop to that. I wanted to keep the momentum going. I didn't want to take a day off because I felt like doing that might cause more problems than, I mean, don't get me wrong. There was part of me that was like, man, it would be nice to just sit back and relax for a while. But you know what? I also knew that because I wasn't spending so much time drinking and using drugs, that I'd have time to relax some at the end of the day, you know? And so it was good for me to get into the next stage of treatment and keep that going. And the last thing was I didn't want to be at home and experience the same triggers and be in the same locations that I was when I used to use. When I went into treatment, I was primarily using at my house, and I had specific places in the house that I would use. And I didn't want to be there and just be by myself. My wife was going to be at work. My kid was going to be at school. I didn't want to just be by myself in those places. And it wasn't even that I was worried that they might trigger me to want to use. It was that I just did not feel comfortable there. So those are some of the reasons that I really wanted to avoid it. And I think everybody can identify with, especially the people, places, and things part of it. So if you're in a situation where for whatever reason you can't avoid discharging from residential treatment on a Friday or Saturday, and you're left to go back to the people, places, and things that might have been part of your addiction, there's a few things that you can do to try to help with that. The first is avoid trigger situations. I had a friend in recovery who unfortunately is no longer in recovery. And he, upon leaving treatment, he very quickly went to hang out with one of his friends who he smoked meth with. And a couple weeks went by and he was smoking meth again. And I was surprised that he would choose to do that, because you're exposing yourself to the same situations where you used to use. The human mind is only so strong. And so when you continually expose yourself to those same situations where you used to use, there is a strong likelihood that eventually you will succumb and you will start using again. And so it's important to me to avoid those kinds of situations. That doesn't mean that, I have to avoid people altogether. But I definitely, if I've got friends who are using, I try to avoid them. And I would also really encourage people to avoid going and hanging out in places where they used to use. So, for example, if you are a drinker and had a bar that you used to go to eat and get drunk, don't go to that bar and just try to have lunch. Find a new place to go. Don't tempt yourself just because you think you're strong enough to handle it, especially at the beginning. The other thing that you can do is to prepare is know what meetings you're going to attend. So there is an app called Meeting Guide that you can download for both Android and Apple. And the Meeting Guide app shows you AA meetings anywhere in the world based on your location, the closest meeting, what time it starts. Make a map of here are all the meetings that I can attend each day. Write that out so that you know what you can do whenever you're in a position where you need to be around other sober people. That plus getting a sponsor as soon as possible. When I was in treatment, we were very highly encouraged to get a sponsor while we were in treatment. And sponsor is a very important part of treatment in AA, in refuge recovery. They have mentors. Finding someone who you can talk to, who's been through what you've been through, and who can help you in recovery. I really encourage doing this as quickly as possible. It's easy. You go to a meeting, you hear someone talk, and if you like what they had to say, go ask them if they're willing to be your sponsor. That's all it takes. And you might have to change sponsors occasionally during your time in recovery. I certainly know people who have had to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But having someone who you can rely on early, who you can call, who you can get advice from, very important. And the last thing that I would suggest is stay as connected as possible with your friends from treatment, but be prepared that some of those friends are very likely to go out and start using again very soon. be cognizant that they may try to ask you or get you to come use with them, and be willing to cut them off as you need to. I had a friend very quickly after recovery, within 48 hours of me getting out of treatment, who was trying to get me to come and use with him. And I was fortunate that I felt no desire to do that. And I had to keep him at arm's length, unfortunately, as time went on, because I knew that was a potential risk. So those are some of the things to consider when you're looking at your discharge date from residential treatment. Work with your counselors, work with anybody in the program that you're attending to really get a good sense of what's appropriate. And just keep in mind that you want to keep things moving. Residential treatment isn't something it's not like it's in the movies where, you go to treatment and then you come out and you're better. It's the beginning of a journey, and you've got to keep on that journey in order to reap the benefits from it. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.